Yo, you know who it is, and for those of you that don't, I'm Cytonius, and this is Speak Geek Explores. This is the second in a series of video essays that will examine, discuss, and dissect various themes and topics in geek and pop culture. Today I'll be discussing Dragon Ball Z and hypermasculinity. On the surface, Dragon Ball Z is your typical action animated series with drawn out fights, fireballs, and macho tough guys fighting to prove who's the strongest in the universe. But what if, beneath the surface, Dragon Ball Z is something more? Is it possible that Dragon Ball Z is an exploration and deconstruction of hypermasculinity? In order to explore this theory, we need to understand hypermasculinity and what it means. The term hypermasculinity refers to exaggerated and toxic male behavior. Hypermasculinity was first studied in 1984 by Donald Mosher and Martin Serkin. They concluded that hypermasculinity can be expressed in three modes of behavior: callous and destructive attitudes towards women, violent behavior as a means of male validation, and danger as a thrill. Within modern society, hypermasculinity has permeated various levels of entertainment in modern culture, including music, movies, and television. During the 80s, we saw the rise of the macho tough guy. We saw more of an emphasis on strong men and tough guys as the supreme standard of masculinity. Entertainment became saturated with macho male stereotypes. Actors and entertainers such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Hulk Hogan, and the Macho Man Randy Savage became the male standard to strive towards. Movies such as Rambo, Bloodsport, and Terminator all showcased men in the 80s doing what they do best: shooting, fighting, and killing to solve problems. The male standard of hypermasculinity was made more impactful when juxtaposed against male geek and nerd culture in the 80s. Within geek culture, the standard of masculinity is that they lack physicality and confidence and are often victimized and ostracized by their supreme masculine counterparts and not desired by females. The irony is that much of the comic book and geek male demographic is enamored and impressed by the same hypermasculinity that opposes their existence. Superheroes like Batman, Superman, and Wolverine are in some way, shape, or form imbued with a level of exaggerated masculinity. In fact, I could argue that hypermasculinity has become so normalized and popular here in the United States that places outside of America have embraced this form of male expression. As a kid, I was raised in the era of the hyper-male aesthetic. I was fed a diet of films starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and Bruce Lee. My TV heroes were Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man Randy Savage, Lex Luger, and Ravishing Rick Rude. All of these men used kicks, punches, and guns as a means of conflict resolution. The only place I saw heroes who didn't abide by the hypermasculine doctrine was in Japanese anime. Shows such as Ronin Warriors, Gundam Wing, and Cowboy Bebop broke the mold of what animated heroes should look like. None of these characters were buff or overly macho. In fact, many of them were non-assuming and not very physically impressive. Of course, there are anime shows with hypermasculine characters. Fist of the North Star and Berserk are a few I can think of. But in my opinion, no other anime expresses hypermasculinity quite like Dragon Ball Z. Created by manga artist Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball Z is the sequel to Dragon Ball. Based on the 16th century folktale Journey to the West, Dragon Ball is the story of the monkey-tailed boy Goku and his friends who search for the magical Dragon Balls that can grant the owner any wish if they find all 7. Dragon Ball the anime series began its television run on Japan's Fuji Television on February 26, 1986, and ended its run on April 12, 1989. It had a total of 153 episodes. While Dragon Ball was a popular series in Japan, the follow-up series Dragon Ball Z is a worldwide phenomenon. In Dragon Ball, the main focus of the series is Goku and his journey to become a strong fighter. In Dragon Ball Z, the focus is Goku becoming the strongest fighter in the universe. Dragon Ball Z is famous for its long drawn-out fights, planet-destroying energy blasts, and angry, screaming power-ups. Many people dismiss Dragon Ball Z and say it's just another mindless violent cartoon with hypermasculine stereotypes. In order to explore my theory about Dragon Ball Z and how it expresses masculinity, we need to discuss and dissect the characters of Dragon Ball Z and their relationships with the main character Goku, as well as any connections to masculinity and hypermasculinity. Just about every main character, both good and evil in the series, is on a quest for power. Power is an important part of the series and a driving motivation for many of the characters. In order to fully understand the importance of power in the series, it's important to understand its levels and varying definitions. Power is defined as the ability or capacity to do something in a particular way. It's safe to assume that power has 6 stages. Those stages are physical force, ideas, wealth, groups, political bureaucracy, and societal norms. Power is an essential component of the hypermasculine identity. Because of the amount of characters in the series pursuing power, power is often stratified among the characters based on work ethics towards power or genetic predispositions of power. In the series, power and hypermasculinity offer social rewards such as fear, respect, adoration from peers, and the affection of the opposite sex. Masculinity in the series, like power, is also stratified and based on a tier system. Because hypermasculinity is a front and is not a legitimate form of male expression, we see many characters embrace this standard of male behavior, and we see how ineffective it is. Pure masculinity, on the other hand, is rooted in genuine and legitimate expressions of male behavior. Examples of this idea is that strength is not aggression, but rather the ability to overcome limitations, loyalty to friends and family, fighting for the greater good, chivalry, and various other heterosexual-based forms of male expression. I want to start with the most obvious example of hypermasculinity in the series, and that is the character Vegeta. Vegeta is the proud prince of Saiyans, who were a barbaric warrior race that lived for combat. Vegeta is one of a handful of his race. He's a warrior prince raised by the ultimate alpha male figure, his father, King Vegeta. Prince Vegeta was raised to be cold, ruthless, and merciless. His expression of masculinity is highly toxic and ineffective. Vegeta is considered to be the second strongest Z fighter, yet he's the only Saiyan character to never defeat a primary villain. Goku defeated Frieza, Trunks defeated Metal Frieza, Gohan defeated Cell. Vegeta becomes a Z fighter to learn what kind of tricks Goku uses to surpass him. Goku's secret is that he fights for something other than himself. I'll go more into detail about that when I talk about Goku and his male expression. The origin of Vegeta's toxic male expression can be traced to his father and how he was raised. Vegeta was a prince raised by the ultimate alpha male, and in an environment of privilege. Most men who embrace hypermasculinity come from some sort of rough upbringing, or they have been influenced by males who come from rough beginnings and introduce impressionable males to the possible social rewards of the hypermasculine aesthetic. When his home planet is destroyed and his father is killed, Vegeta is enslaved by the villain Frieza, a powerful megalomaniacal warrior tyrant. This is very important for the character Vegeta. King Vegeta was Vegeta's first example of masculinity. The murder of his father at the hands of a villain like Frieza, whose gender is ambiguous, is the first example for Vegeta that proves hypermasculinity is ineffective. While Frieza's gender is debatable for some, it is confirmed from various sources, including Akira Toriyama, that Frieza is indeed a male character. However, Frieza's appearance and demeanor is rooted in feminine traits. Yet he rules over the barbaric and hypermasculine race of Saiyans with no opposition. Like most men who embrace the toxic male aesthetic, Vegeta's male expression is a defense mechanism. It is rooted in a callous outlook on life caused by being a victim or watching someone else getting victimized. As a child, Vegeta saw how ineffective his father's masculinity was, but he still embraced it. For Vegeta, hypermasculinity is not only a defense mechanism, but a stubborn way to honor his father's expression of masculinity. Vegeta's resentment of Goku is rooted not only in combat, but in the fact that without toxic masculinity as a crutch, Goku still surpasses Vegeta constantly. A defining moment in Dragon Ball Z is where Vegeta speaks about the extermination of the Saiyan race at the hands of Frieza.
You killed our home planet. It was him.
He's just a corpse and he's still blabbing. I'll have to gag him to shut him up.
Your father and mine, the whole planet. He blew it up. It's true. No one's survived but us. Ask him if you want. He'll tell you. He's proud of it.
Please stop talking, Vegeta. It's sapping all of your strength.
No! Listen, you have to hear this. We worked so hard for him. We did everything he asked of us and more. He took me from my father when I was just a little boy. He made me do whatever he wanted and said he would kill my father if I didn't. I did everything he asked, but he killed him anyway, along with everyone else. He was scared of us. Scared that a Super Saiyan would be born to rise up and overthrow him.
A touching story.
Please, no more. Save your strength.
Kakarot, please, destroy Frieza. He made me what I am. Don't let him do it to anyone else. Whatever it takes, stop him. Please.
Here is where we see the hypermasculinity shed and Vegeta becomes vulnerable. As the series progresses, Vegeta sheds his armor both figuratively and literally. With each saga in the series, Vegeta embraces humanity more and more, and he wears less and less of his Saiyan armor, until he sheds it completely and has a family and something to fight for, other than pride and anger. It isn't until Vegeta humbles himself and admits that his constant rival in the series, Goku, is better than him, that we truly see his toxic masculinity fade.
Amazing. How do you do it, Kakarot? How can a Saiyan fight like that, and at the same time be so gentle that he wouldn't hurt a fly? Oh, it makes me angry just thinking about it. But perhaps it is my anger that has made me blind to the truth for so long. I see it now. This day has made it all too clear. You're better than me, Kakarot. You are the best.